click the right Gmail account.
Yeah, and if I don't see it, I'll like send you some kind of panic.
All right, we are live. So take it away, Melanie, and I will see you all on YouTube.
I don't have a live button.
The top left-hand corner, it says live on YouTube.
I see it.
So then you can just click the drop down and it says stop live stream when you're ready. Or I could just hang on and disappear. And I can always end it.
Yeah, you can end it. That way we don't do something bad. So I'm not getting. Very interesting. Oh, I see stop video. That can work. All right. Okay. Whatever. We're live. So hello. Good evening. And welcome to the Rom Com Pool Party. I hope you have brought your floaties and are prepared to sit back and relax and enjoy yourself this evening with this group of rom-com authors. So I'm Melanie Johnson, and we are here with Love Sweet Arrow tonight. And I have with me some fabulous authors of romantic comedies, all of whom have provided some great books for us to dive into, especially during this past year where we have definitely needed a life preserver. And yes, there will be more puns throughout the evening. Okay. So before we get started, we're going to do a little bit of business. I wanted to mention that Love Sweet Arrow has these new summer sultry surprise boxes by the Boozy Book Broads, myself and Angelina M. Lopez and Daniel Dresser, and we have picked a couple of books. We've kind of curated some books for you to read, and there's a really cool sexy books on the beach candle, and you can get all of that plus other treats in a surprise box for $35, and if you use the code BBB June discount by the end of this month, you'll get 10% off. So that's a little bit of business, and we're going to jump right in now and say hello to everyone who I have with me. So let's say hi to Alexis first. Hi, Alexis. And your microphone is off. There you
Hi.
go. Hey, so where are you partying with us from?
I'm in New York City, where the weather's been pretty good, but it looks like we are in for a heat wave shortly.
Yeah, it's weird because it seems like whatever I have in Chicago, you seem to get a few days later.
Yeah.
To blow that direction. So you're coming to us from New York. If you were to swim up to the pool bar right now and order a drink, what would it be?
I would probably get a Moscow Mule, or you know what? I'd get a glass of rosé because for me that's like really like summer, some sparkling rosé.
Oh, some rosé. I finally am watching the last season of Schitt's Creek, and I'm at the episode where they're ordering, like Moira might do the commercial for the winery, and they drink like 30 different rosé, like a banana rosé.
Yeah.
All right, so that's Alexis Daria, and next up we have Rosie Dannon. Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I'm coming in from London tonight, so it's 1 a.m. But I put on lipstick to disguise the fact that I'm like it's late. I feel like I look relatively awake.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if you want to join us, but if you want to, and I was so excited you said yes. So you are partying late. You're like the one who's like sneaking into the pool after hours. Like the hotel is all quiet at night, and you sneak in and go for a midnight swim. So what?
I like that because I've never been that daring in real life. I was thinking that I would get a pina colada, like really just like lean in, go full vacation mode for tonight.
Have some fun. That's right. I think I did the break-in. It was like a slumber party when we were teenagers at like a hotel. Like the parents got us a room. I think we definitely did the sneak into the hotel pool. After it wasn't as exciting because we're just a bunch of teenagers. So. And then next up we have Denise Williams. Hello.
Hello. And before I introduce myself, I have to say I feel like that's a meet cute waiting to happen. Like getting busted by the hotel lifeguard security guard as you're sneaking into the pool late at night.
So the meet cute is with the lifeguard. I like it. Yeah. He's trying to be all tell you what to do.
Or the person you meet in hotel jail. I mean, there's a lot of options here.
And we're gonna start plotting a book right here at the pool party. That actually, that's one of the things I miss about hanging out in groups, because it's amazing how plot bunnies just start to develop when you're sitting around drinking, chilling out. All right, so Denise, speaking of drinking, what are you drinking?
Well, I was going to say pina colada, which is funny because Rosie and I just talked about copying answers. So I will say, I'll lean into, let's go strawberry daiquiri, because I'm coming to you from the middle of Iowa, or thunderstorm central, where there are no beaches to be found and no pools I want to be in. So I think the imaginary daiquiri at the pool sounds great.
Yeah, I don't think it's been so long since I've had a strawberry daiquiri. Those are very tasty. And then next up, we're going to swim on over to Carrie Winfrey. Hello.
Hello, I am in Columbus, Ohio.
So swimming in from Columbus, Ohio. And what are you ordering to drink?
Okay, I also actually was gonna say pina colada. So I'm gonna pick something else very beachy and go for a Mai Tai.
Ooh, I love, because they always have like the umbrella and all the fancy extras.
Anything with an umbrella, I feel like is my pick. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to have the umbrella. And also, and then we have Lisa K Adams. Hello.
Hi, I'm coming from Michigan, where it also is not pool party weather. It's been raining for days, and it's actually not even that warm out. So in my imaginary pool party where it's like 85 degrees, I'm going for a margarita, I think. Yeah, a frozen margarita.
Ooh, yes, frozen margarita.
Yeah.
Are you a salt or no salt girl?
Salt, definitely salt. Yeah.
Gotta have that little bit of sweet. Me too. I love how so many of you wanted to order a pina colada. I feel like we just might as well get a picture of those. And
Yes,
then we'll
plop it on the table. Mhm.
Do the
So
rest
if
of you not have pictures of pina colada next to you right now? Am I?
Denise is like, that was already a given.
Like, weren't we supposed to bring that? I thought, like.
So if you're tuning in to watch the chat, hello, thank you for joining us. You can drop your questions that you might have for any of the authors in the comments. You're also welcome to answer the questions with, tell us what you'd be drinking at the pool, answer the rom-com questions, and, just let us know what's going on, with you in the comments. And we're glad you're here. And we're going to, really just like go all the way, dive into the deep end with a serious question here, which I think comes up a lot. And anyone who writes rom-coms in this day and age is asked this question. You see all these illustrated covers, and there's quite a variety of what happens inside those pages, like once you open that book up. And then I know I've gotten this question a lot, so I'm curious to hear your answers. If you had to differentiate between what a contemporary romance is and a romantic comedy is, what would you say is the thing that makes it different? What would you say is essential to make a rom-com a rom-com? And I'm going to call on Lissa first and have you jump right in and see if you have any ideas.
Yeah, for sure. I get asked that a lot too, and I know that it's a big conversation that, if you spend any time on Twitter, you're going to see it a lot on Twitter in particular. To me, like, there's a couple of things that make a rom-com and not just a contemporary, and that is that if the humor plays a central role in the development of the relationship. That is, if you can take the humor out of the book, the funny scenes out of the book, and still have a complete romance, a complete character arc, then you probably have a contemporary with some humor in it. But if you cannot remove that humor, if the humor is directly tied into the development of the romance or the development of the plot, that to me is a rom-com. And that can be, I think, created in a couple of ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be the humor between the two characters. It can be the world that you've created can be funny. That's
a great answer. And I have never thought about it that way, but it's kind of the same thing when you get into what is the difference between erotic romance and contemporary romance. And that is if you can pull the sex out of the story and still have the story, then it's probably not an erotic romance. And that's kind of a other side of the coin with if you can take those comedic elements out and still, I've never thought about it that way. And I guess thinking about my book, then yes, it's definitely a romantic comedy because you could not pull out those elements and still have the story. And I'm thinking through, yeah, all the books, and that would definitely apply. So, Carrie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I really like Lissa's answer. That is a good one because this is such a hard question. And like you said, you do get asked it a lot. And I feel like I never have a great answer for people. What I always say is that there has to be actual humor in a romantic comedy. Like there have to be actual jokes.
Let's set the bar.
Yes, but I think it's hard because I know there are some people who don't think rom-coms should be sad at all. And I personally don't agree with that. I think the best rom-coms also can be pretty sad. I regularly cry when I watch rom-coms. I don't know. So I don't know really what to say. Like I wish I had a better answer and that I understood it better myself. So I'd have a better answer to give other people.
Well, no, I think that's why it's a great conversation, and it's so interesting to hear answers. Like I said, I've not heard that answer before that Lissa gave, and I think we may all be stealing that one. So just so you know. Denise, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that definitely speaks to it. I also, in a way, I think with books and in some way with movies, we try to get real specific on what a rom-com is, just like with any other area of book, and most books don't fit into that. The simple answer I usually give, at least when it's a quick interview, is a rom-com needs to be funny and contemporary romance needs to be contemporary. And the humor has to be there. But what I think is interesting too when we talk about humor is that so subjective. And what is funny to someone or isn't to others, but also when we talk about like what's sad or what is a downer, like, hello, I've got lots of that in my book. That's very real to some people. Like that's their lived experience and doesn't like negate humor. So I think it's an interesting conversation to have that we will never land on an answer until somebody with more power than any of us just says this is what it is, because it's so subjective of what's funny, what's light. Do things need to be light? Does rom-com mean rom-com and fluff or not? Like there's so many nuances that for me, it really comes down to, did I laugh?
Okay, yeah.
Then for me, it was comedy. And did I swoon? And then it was romance. And did I do both? Then it was romantic comedy. That's oversimplifying so many of those issues, but, I do think a lot of that plays in.
Yeah. It's a good point, and it's true. Everyone has their own tastes, but if it makes you laugh and swoon, then it's probably a rom-com. Rosie, what about you? Any other thoughts?
I think if someone's asking me for a definition from like a craft perspective, I do usually give something close to what Lissa laid out in terms of like asking yourself, is the humor essential to the romance or is it complementary to the romance? Like both are great. It can just kind of help you self-categorize. But sort of in the interest of building on the conversation here, because I know it is one that we all have day in and day out, I think it is also interesting to ask ourselves, like, what do people think can't be a rom-com? And I think like one thing that I've heard is like, well, rom-com has to be lower heat as an expectation. And I definitely disagree with that. And I think like that's kind of why when The Roommate came out, we talked about like a raunch-com because we wanted to signal this is high heat, and a lot of the humor in The Roommate is actually like laughing about some of the awkward like sexual tension moments. And I think that's what gives it a lot of its personality. And I think rom-coms in particular have kind of been dominated by sort of like the Judd Apatow like boys club humor, like when they think about who gets to decide what's funny about sex. And I think I really like that we are seeing a lot more sex positive rom-coms in the romance genre, because it's just interesting to see that redefined from more inclusive perspectives.
That's also a great answer. I really like that. And it's true. Like I do tend to think, because so many rom-coms are the whole fade to black. Like it's almost like a running joke. Like if it's a rom-com, you don't get to the sexy bits. But that is, it's kind of like assume that this happens off screen, off the page. So I like what you're saying about it being something, especially with it tied to these male, driven rom-coms, written, produced, etc., that they're allowed to have all of that humor, and it tends to be, you know, the joke is on us, like, you know, that it's kind of turning the tables and opening the script up a little bit more. So this is fantastic. Alexis, anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, like the others have all said, from a craft point, I think the tone is really what differentiates between a rom-com and a contemporary romance, because the line between them, let's be real, is very blurry. And I think you can have maybe even the same kinds of things happening in a story. You know, being a rom-com doesn't mean that it can't be dramatic or angsty, but it's just the tone with which it is written and sort of handled from a narrative perspective. If it's handled with humor and like almost like a lighthearted, even a dark humor, that's one thing, as opposed to if it's you know, kind of like a darker, more dramatic, and like I said, angsty kind of tone overall. But I also think that the big part of it that we haven't mentioned is that this is just a marketing and packaging term as well. You know, to correlate, and I think that correlates to
Great.
like shorthand for this is what you might expect in a romantic comedy movie. And that's basically where it came from.
Well, and in a lot of ways, like rom-com movies are contemporary romances, but it's like you can't use that, you know, you can't use that dirty word. You can't use romance. Like people will be like, what? So rom-com kind of like generalizes it. Like you said, it's a marketing, especially at this point, it has become this marketing term that gets slapped on a lot of books. And that's a whole other conversation, which we are going to swim away from very quickly.
That's the deep end.
That's for another time. We're just here to have some fun. So everyone take a sip, take a drink, and we're going to float on some tropes. So we could talk about this, like we could have like a whole like weekend party and just spend all the time talking about the tropes. But I kind of narrowed it down in a general way. And I feel like so many rom-coms, books and movies always have these kind of three main ingredients, the trifecta, or as my nerdy husband would say, the triforce from Zelda. So you always have the meet cute, you always have a sidekick, whether it's the best friend or the family, so, you know, some group that the character bounces off of and can kind of reveal themselves to, that kind of thing. And then often you will have, you know, some kind of grand gesture, some kind of, you know, big moment, you know, towards the end. So what I wanted to do is break this down a little bit and talk to you about these things. We're going to talk about our favorite examples of these on screen, and perhaps maybe examples of this in our own work. So I'm going to roll it right back to you, Alexis. And, you know, speaking of, so You Had Me at Ola came out last year, and there's definitely a meet cute that is reminiscent of some iconic rom-coms, namely the bump and spill, as I like to call it. And if you're watching, I think if I asked you, can you think of any romantic movies that start with the characters bumping into each other and something gets spilled, you can probably think of one. Like one of the most famous, obviously Notting Hill, with the juice spilling on Julia Roberts. And Alexis, and yours, can you tell us a little bit about that bump and spill meet cute?
Yeah, it's Jasmine and Ashton's first time meeting. They're both a little nervous about meeting each other because they're about to star on the remake of a telenovela together, and they haven't met yet. They haven't done chemistry reads. It's all happened very quickly. And the very first thing that happens is that he backs into her and she's holding an iced coffee and the lid is like not quite on, and it just like spills all over her like beautiful outfit that she was going to wear to table reads. And she's got like 10 minutes to deal with it. So writing this book, I was really conscious of, you know, that I was giving a nod to soap operas, telenovelas, and rom-coms because I knew about the format that this was going to be in. So I was really thinking, and I definitely made lists of like, what are the common tropes from all three of those things? And I used them in the main story and then in the story within the story. Like whatever I couldn't fit into the main story, it was like, this is going to go into the show that they're on. So I got to have a lot of fun with that.
Like kind of a way to multitask, do it twice. Yeah.
Exactly. And I really, I used it to show that she, you know, she doesn't like get upset or anything. She knows this is an accident, but she's also like, how do I deal with this? And I really wanted it to show what her character was like, how she goes into problem solving mode. She makes the best of it. She laughs it off. And he's the one who's like all in his head, and it affects his performance going forward. So I was really thinking about like how to show that kind of scene and make it my own. And also because it is such a classic scene, although we have a friend who's now writing as Violet Marsh, and I had sent her an early copy, and she was like, can it please be an iced coffee? Because I used to be a lawyer, and I will be very concerned if he spilled hot coffee on her, because that's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
That's hilarious. I did not realize that she had, that makes so much sense though.
Yeah.
And she
So,
was like, this is not,
iced coffee.
not like official advice, but yes. That makes sense that you made it an iced coffee then. So that's great. And so if you had to think of are there any meet cute moments from rom-com movies that are a personal favorite of yours?
So when I started looking at the questions for this, I of course could not remember a single rom-com movie I've ever watched in my entire life. And I started looking at lists, and I was like, I know I've seen all these movies, and I can't remember a single thing about them. But what I did watch recently was a romantic K-drama called It's Okay to Not Be Okay. And I just rewatched their meet cute because it's so over the top, where he's basically like getting on her case because she's smoking in a non-smoking area, and she's just like completely ignoring him. But then when she gets up, she looks at him and she's like, do you believe in destiny? And like the cherry blossom tree behind them just like immediately looses all of these petals into the air, and it shows them from 12 different angles staring at each other. And then she taps out the ash of her cigarette into his cup and dumps it in and walks away.
Okay, so I have just got on the K-drama train, and like I just started with Crash Landing on You, which I gobbled up like mad. I think what is it's because they take the tropes and it's just like 100 magnified 100 times. So definitely
Completely leaning into them.
Yeah, they lean in very hard into all of that stuff. Okay, so I wanted to ask Rosie, how about you? Do you have a favorite meet cute from a movie?
I have a soft spot. I was thinking of this too, because I think a lot of the things we end up writing are usually reflective of things that we've or at least for me, like things I gravitated to in rom-coms growing up. And I kind of gravitate towards like one character like humbles themselves in front of the other, and like kind of embarrasses themselves in sort of like an endearing way. Because when I was thinking about both the roommate and the intimacy experiment, in very different ways, like Clara and Naomi both have some sort of like kind of embarrassing thing sort of happen to them. And I think that's just kind of nice to like see somebody at like with their guard down, and have that be a connection point. And I was thinking about movies that I like that in, and I actually watched The Wedding Singer recently. And if you haven't watched that in a while, I holds up like relatively well, like, you know, some not fully, but I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was really sweet. And Adam Sandler is like helping a kid like puke into a trash can, and Drew Barrymore like comes out and he's like, don't worry, this kid's like gonna be fine. He's just had too much to drink at the wedding. And it's just like, it's not glamorous, but it's like a really sweet way for her to see a little bit about his character and like how he's trying to kind of look out for this kid who doesn't want to be embarrassed in front of his family. And I really like that introduction.
And it does, yeah, sometimes you like, if sometimes things like puke are involved in those meet cutes.
Yeah.
Denise, what about you? So do you have a favorite meet cute from a movie?
Yeah, like Alexis, I have seen a billion rom-coms and definitely had to Google some earlier because I couldn't remember any. And I think my favorite ever for the meet cute and just in general is When Harry Met Sally. And I haven't watched it in years, but that idea of meeting and this kind of these fated interactions being kind of how they meet and disagreeing, like I just love everything about that. That's what I love to read in like Enemies to Lovers and Second Chance romance. And so that's definitely my favorite. And just like their humor and the way their characters are so kind of diametrically in opposition in these different and weird things, that is definitely one of my favorites. I took a class on rom-coms in college. It was about intimate communication, and to teach it, we watched old rom-coms. And so that was the first time I'd seen that movie, and actually several others that are on my list. And I always think about that. And I ran into that professor not that long ago, but that one has always stuck with me.
Sounds like a really cool course. So would you say, for as far as so How to Fail at Flirting was your debut. What would you say about the meet cute in that book for you?
Well, it also involved throwing up. So the heroine, for folks who have not read the book, makes a to-do list to kind of get her life back together. And one of them is, okay, I'm going to flirt and I'm going to have one night stand and all of these things, and meets this guy, and it's kind of fortuitous, and is like, yes, okay, we've had a lot to drink, but we are doing this thing. And they get started, and then they definitely do not finish because she gets sick. And so it's kind of all this buildup in her head and in the book, and it's about to be something high heat, and then it's not. And that the end of the book circles back to, you know, him saying, you know, you're really good at flirting. He's like, you seem to forget that I threw up on you the first night we met. And he's like, yeah, only somebody who's really falling for you would text you the next day. And he had texted her like that night. So it's like kind of coming back to that full circle. But
I'm a sucker.
I don't know where that came from. That was not part of my life. But I really like that. Thank you.
Yeah, whenever books or movies do that circle back to something that came out, like was hinted at in the beginning, then you get me. I love it. So Carrie, your books are very rom-com. They are, you know, love letters to rom-coms in many ways. So tell us about, I mean, I can't imagine how long your list is, but do you have a favorite meet cute from a movie?
Yeah, it was really hard to narrow it down because I do have so many, but I went for a classic for this one. One of my favorites is Sleepless in Seattle because it is a kind of a one-sided meet cute, which I think is really interesting because Meg Ryan hears Tom Hanks on a radio call-in show. So she hears him kind of pour out his whole heart about being a widower, and she learns so much about him, and he doesn't even know she exists. And he doesn't know she exists for like 90% of the movie, yeah. 95%.
So I do a thing usually on Sundays called Mad About Meet Cutes, and I interview authors about their in real life meet cutes and the, you know, favorite movie ones. And Carrie, you had talked about this, and we realized that's right. Like he's kind of unaware of her as a person for most of the movie.
Yeah, so that's like a very tricky meet cute to pull off. But I do like that just because it is unique and it's so different from other things. But I mean, I love every kind of meet cute.
So tell us a little bit more about, now you could pick, because you've got quite the selection of rom-coms to choose from in your personal library. Do you want to tell us about the meet cute in Very Sincerely Yours?
Yeah, so it was also very inspired by Nora Ephron, both Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail, because the two characters meet over email first. One of them hosts a children's show. His name is Everett St. James, and his show is called Everett's Place. And he's like a puppeteer, kind of like, we call him Hot Mr. Rogers, but like imagine younger than Mr. Rogers is what I always like to say. And Teddy is a woman who is kind of addicted to watching the show because she finds it very comforting. So she emails him at the email address meant for children to write in their questions. And they end up having email pen pals. So it's like another situation where she kind of knows him and she already knows what he looks like and who he is. And he only knows her via email.
Right. But I want to clarify, he knows she's not a child.
Yes, that is clarified early on.
Okay, so Lisa, your especially the first book in the bromance series, because it is an established couple already married, the meet cute in some ways is kind of different, and we can talk about you know, you've got other books in the series. We probably I'll let you pick which meet cute from this series do you want to talk about.
Yeah, so the first book in the series is definitely, it's a married couple. So it's kind of a meet angry because they're on the verge of divorce. And so she's knocking down a wall in their house when he shows up. But I think probably my favorite of all the books would be the second book in the series, Undercover Bromance. The two of them, the two main characters, Liv and Mac, they already sort of know who each other are just because they exist in this same group of friends. But they meet when he's on a date with someone else and at a restaurant where she's the pastry chef, and he orders this absurd dish that's on the menu. It's a $1,000 cupcake called The Sultan, and she has to bring it out, and she accidentally spills it on the date. And so it's probably was the funnest of all the meet cutes that I've written, just because it's just such this, it's a meat disaster, and she just like hates him on sight anyway, and no one's ever hated him, so he cannot believe how badly this is all going, because his date walks out and Liv hates him. And so that was definitely, I think, the funnest meet cute that I've ever written. It was very satisfying.
It is the bump and spill. It
is, yeah.
A giant
It's
cupcake.
a $1,000 cupcake that lands in his date's lap. So that was very fun. But yeah. And I go classic too for like my favorite rom-com meet cute movie wise. But I'm going like way back classic to A Philadelphia Story. Have you guys ever seen that with Cary Grant, Kathleen Hepburn, and Jimmy Stewart? And it's like, it's a love triangle meet cute. And so each time, the meet cutes for all of them are really, really funny. So I go way back.
And they call them screwball comedies,
Yeah.
So I want to move into this, idea of like the sidekick, the family, the goofy family, or the very invasive, nosy family, or the group of friends. There's always kind of this, especially like in the bromance. I mean, that's like central to the stories, is that group of bros who read romance together. So let's talk a little bit about that element in your stories. I'm sticking with you.
Okay, yeah. So definitely, I think in my books, the sidekick, the secondary characters are, the source of a lot of the humor. In those books, they're central to the development of the characters and the development of the romances, but often they're the source of the humor, because the main characters in my books often are not hilarious together. Like there's a lot of angst between the two of them in the main romance. So when the guys come in, when the bros come in, that's where a lot of that humor comes in. But it's not just it's not episodic in the sense that, okay, we've got a serious scene between the two main characters, now let's move into a funny scene.
It's not like the sidekick on a side show. They are,
right, they're like part and parcel. And so I do feel like, for me, when I'm reading a rom-com or watching a rom-com, sometimes for me, like the most satisfying elements are those like side characters, like in Sleep, or in While You Were Sleeping. Like his family,
yes,
are so hilarious, and they like, that to me is one of the funniest parts of that movie.
Yeah, it's very much
this,
and that was one of the ones I had in my head when I asked this question. So great. Yeah. Carrie, what about you? If you had to think of, we'll kind of reverse the question. So if you like, Alyssa was just saying, the family in While You Were Sleeping, if you think of any favorite, sidekicks, whether they're friends or groups of people within a storyline in a rom-com, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, this was a hard one because these are always my favorite part of rom-coms, both watching or reading them and also writing them. I love the side characters. So I went with one I just watched pretty recently called The Broken Hearts Gallery. And the main character in that movie, she's like a woman in her 20s in New York. And she has this group of friends who are so funny. And they like are addicted to murder podcasts and murder books. So they're always talking about that. And the movie's about their romance with the lead, but then it's also so much about her and her friends like going out to karaoke and talking about murder. And I thought it was really fun.
I think of the SNL when they did that song about loving the murder.
Yes, yeah.
And so within your stories, so within the Waiting for Tom Hanks and Not Like the Movies, the sidekick becomes the lead, like in your books. And I don't know if you want to talk about Very Sincerely Yours, but that's the one. So do you have a side character that you kind of are the most precious about, that you found to be your favorite?
Yeah, I think so. In Very Sincerely Yours, the main character, Teddy, has two best friends named Eleanor and Kirsten. And I love them because they're like so comforting, and their house has an ice cream freezer, which is a freezer that is solely dedicated to ice cream. And that is like my fantasy. Like if somebody had that, they would be my best friend.
Like only ice cream allowed inside.
Yes.
Well, then that's the house to go to whenever you need cheering up. Like I need to come over and raid your ice cream freezer.
Yeah, and like they're always there for her with emotional support, but also ice cream support, which is just as
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Denise, how about you? Do you have a favorite side character, or is there a family element in one of your books that you really feel, kind of, embodies this trope?
Yeah, I'd say in How to Fail at Flirting, and then in The Fastest Way to Fall, which is my next one, there is kind of found family. Like they don't have issues with their blood family, but their friends really have become their family in the Chicago area. In the first book, I wasn't really thinking, and all of her best friends are married couples. And so I was like, well, it's going to be hard to make them the lead in their own rom-com next time.
Whoops. Yeah.
Let me add a character. So now you get Wes, the sexy athletic trainer. Now he's the hero in the second book. But I love the writing the friends, because in my head, they all have their own love stories, whether I'm going to write them or not, so in my head, I also have all these motivations and plans for them. And it's just sort of fun building them into the world. And so in my second book, the heroine Britta has 3 best friends, RJ, Kat, and Dell. And RJ is the heroine in my third book. And she's tough as nails, and she's a lawyer, and she's always kind of lawyering people and getting them to tell the truth. And I loved writing her, and I loved giving her own story. And Dell grew out of a joke with a friend that said I needed to write a book that took place on a farm. I was like, I've been on a farm like 4 times in my whole life. How am I going to write that book? And then she was joking, and we actually brainstormed it, and I kind of have a plot for it. But I joked with her that it would be called The Farmer and the Dell. And so now Dell is in the book, and he's in the series, and Dell will get his own love story.
I love it.
Pretty pumped about that. So, when I was thinking of examples, the first one that came to mind was My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Of course.
Again, another one I haven't seen in years, but the family provided so much of the love and the structure for that movie, but also so much of the comic relief. That one was definitely up there for me as, the sidekick and the family and the best friends who still they existed kind of in their own right versus just to be the mirror to the main character.
Yeah, which is a great point to make. Like that's when I think it really thrives, when it is more than just, there to serve the purpose of something for the main character, when they have this existence on their own. And like I'm like you, like when I write my friends, I'm like their entire worlds are created, and it's like I don't want to leave my friends separate about them. Rosie, how about you also same. You have, where in the first book, the roommate, one of the friends becomes like the central character in the intimacy experiment. But do you want to talk a little bit about any like sidekick friends or groups that in your stories that have that element to it?
Yeah. So the primary secondary character in the roommate is Naomi, who does go on to be the heroine of the intimacy experiment. And she's actually the hero's ex-girlfriend. So it's actually sort of like a subversion of typical rom-com tropes, because, and some of them I love, like there are some great villainess, like
evil ex.
Yeah, like I was thinking about The Parent Trap, which I don't think people necessarily think about as being a rom-com, but I think you can make an argument for it. And Meredith Blake is like a great villain. But at the same time, I think, I really like to see women supporting other women, and I felt like this was a good opportunity to kind of flip the script with Naomi. And so, when she's introduced, it's like a little questioning: is she going to be territorial? Like, what is her perspective going to be when Josh and Clara get involved? And I think that, yeah, she does sort of like deviate and end up having like a very different role than one might expect at first blush. So that was really fun. And yeah, and I think I was trying to think if there are other rom-com movies that have sort of like more of a supportive either ex-girlfriend or like, character. And I was thinking about The Wedding Planner. When like the wife or like the fiance in that doesn't like end up with Matthew McConaughey, she's not actually like a villain. They're just like not, her and Matthew McConaughey are just like not right for each other.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's like a good example of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that you kind of looked for that. Like, let me see if there are other examples of this out there, which is great. And I do love when you take this very kind of standard, cardboard idea and subvert it and make it this other thing. So Alexis, I know we definitely have some strong sidekicks that are in your new series. We have the Primas of Power.
Yes. I mean, they were the backbone of the whole series. I always knew that it was going to center on this group of 3 cousins and that each one of them was going to get a book. So that was always in place. And the trick was just making sure that the family really was present. After I decided to make them both actors who were spending so many hours a day on set, I was like, why did I do this? But in terms of the family, I really was thinking again of telenovelas where the family unit is so central, but also like big, and the extended family as well. A couple that everybody knows because they've been remade in America are like Ugly Betty and Jane the Virgin, where those shows would not work the same way without the family element. So that's how I wanted this series to function as well. But then, so Jasmine's got her cousins in You Had Me at Hola, and then Michelle's book is the second book that's coming out this year, A La Like Adios, and I'm working on Ava's book now. And so I was thinking about that, but then also I was like, well, Jasmine's going to need some work friends. So in You Had Me at Hola, she's friends with the other actors there too. And I really put a lot of thought into who they were. And they don't show up that much, but I still had a lot of fun writing them into scenes as well.
The karaoke scene, which is on its own a rom-com trope. Like, we could sit here and talk about all the movies with karaoke in it. But
yes. Nino and Lily, they go do karaoke, they're hanging out in their trailers, they go to like an art summit together. But I was thinking about like other movies that I've loved that have had this, and the one that really stands out to me is The Other Woman with Cameron Diaz and Leslie Mann and Kate Upton. And
I will have to add this to my list. I have not watched it.
It's really like surprisingly good, because it starts off with all of them realizing that they've all been dating the same man, Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones, as like a Long Island, businessman, whatever.
I'm thinking of the Boyfriend Project from Sarah Rashan now.
Yes. Yeah. And it's, especially for Leslie Mann and Cameron Diaz, like Cameron Diaz is basically, she's like, I'm a high-powered lawyer. I don't have time for this. And Leslie Mann is like, I'm his wife and I have a lot of emotions and I brought my giant dog over. Can I stay with you? And she's like, what is happening?
Oh, so it's like an opposites attract friendship. Like,
yeah. And so they become like really good friends over the course of the story, over the movie, as they're seeking out revenge on him.
I love it. I'm gonna have to look this movie up. That is great.
It's really fun.
So we're gonna make this one go a little faster, and because the grand gesture is like one of those things that you hear about all the time, but it doesn't always happen, and it sometimes doesn't work the way you want it to. So I would like to see you raise your hand if you feel like one of your books definitely has a grand gesture. Everybody, all right. Okay. Rosie, tell us about one of your epic grand gestures.
I love like grand gestures. I know some people are on the fence, like totally respect that opinion, but again, I think just growing up in love with rom-com movies, like it just, I love that it's a departure. I love that it's this like whole moment about just showing what someone means to you. I was thinking about, like, I will talk about mine in a second, but I was thinking about the one in Never Been Kissed, which like that is problematic in a lot of ways, like without going into that, like just her standing on the baseball field, the whole stadium of people like taking place in this love story with them just gets me. And I do think mine are a little bit of a send up to that. And so I guess I'll talk about the one in The Roommate because the intimacy experiment is new. You might not have read it yet, so I don't want to spoil it too much, but in The Roommate, it's actually the heroine groveling, which I know we don't always see as much. I think heroes tend to dominate the grovel game. And basically she has been a part of building this sex positive website, but she didn't want her name attached to it because she is a socialite from a like infamous family. And it comes out that she is involved, and she's like upset with the hero and says kind of like, I'm out. And her grand gesture is that she comes in when he's filming like a radio interview and kind of like claims like both her part in the business and her feelings for him out loud. And for him, that's a big deal because as a sex worker, he had felt insecure about someone like loving him for who he is because he's internalized a lot of the societal stigma. So it's kind of a nice moment where they both just get to celebrate their love for each other as exactly who they are, like the imperfect people that they are. And yeah, like,
have you seen the Hookup Plan before?
The Hookup
It's
Plan.
French. It's French and it's on Netflix. Okay,
No.
so I would highly recommend you watch the Hookup Plan. I like watching it in French, but there are subtitles. But he is a male prostitute that her friends hire for her to get over a bad breakup.
Okay, yeah, I will definitely check that. I mean, I love the kiss quotient, obviously, which has a male escort. So
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So everyone, I of course I'm asking you a pool full of rom-com writers about grand gestures. I should have known everyone's like, yes. Because like Rosie said, some people can be on the fence about them. But Denise, what about you? Tell us about a grand gesture that, gets you in the feels.
In a movie, I'll go back to When Harry Met Sally, like him running across and busting into the New Year's Eve party. And when you meet you figure out the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, you want the rest of your life to start right now, I love that. I'll always love that. That for me is so big because it's big. It's big on screen, but it's big for the characters. And so when I write the grand gesture, sometimes it is grand and elaborate, but very often it's very small, but it's a grand thing for that character. It's a big step for them. They are humbled. I have a fair number of heroines who are doing some groveling. I just finished writing the one for book 3. And, whoever it is, though, I think that they are doing something that's big for the other person. In my second book, In the Fastest Way to Fall, which is out in November, the hero plans this very elaborate that pulls in all of these things from the whole book and the whole story and their whole love story. And he has it all mapped out. And then he thinks she needs him. And so he abandons this whole plan and just meets her in the middle of this 10K that she's running to like coach her because he was her coach and is her coach. And so it's that idea that is grand for him, that's huge for him and for her. And it just throws aside all these other big plans he had. And those for me are the ones that just hit me in the feels, whether they are big or very small, but when you can see and kind of feel the significance. And that is for me when I'm either completely sold on a rom-com or I am screaming in my car.
I love what you said about how it's big. It's big for them, like what they're doing. It's a big thing for them so it can be grand and still very intimate. So yeah, I love it. All right, Carrie.
Well, I agree with Denise that When Harry Met Sally is one of the best because I love anything where someone has to like run or like drive really fast or like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days where Matthew McConaughey hops on his motorcycle. Those are always my favorites.
Well, they get the heart pumping and it's like I think of Notting Hill and like the clown car of people that are like racing to the All right, so for as far as your stories go, I don't know if you don't want to do any reveals of stuff that hasn't come out yet, but
well, in Waiting for Tom Hanks, since I wanted to use as many rom-com cliches as I possibly could in one book, I knew I had to have a grand gesture. So I do
and
have
you had the run, yeah.
Yeah, like she speeds through the town, like kind of a clown car situation, everyone packed into it to get to him at the airport. But then when she gets there, he's not there anymore. So she has to buy a ticket to like follow him all the way to New York. But it was fun. Like
I was just thinking about that. It's when you're talking about like, wait a minute, yeah, you have that whole thing and like she's running and like he's filming something or signing something and she's like at the fence and she's
it was like the biggest possible grand gesture I could think of with like every single thing. Like it's on TV, there's an airport involved, there's a rush through traffic involved.
You're throwing it all in there.
Yeah.
So Lissa, for the book that's coming out next, the Russians book, who we find out he
Right.
is writing some romance on the side.
Yeah.
He probably has some thoughts about the grand gesture himself.
Yeah. So one of the rules of book club is that you always run for grand gesture. Like that's just sort of a rule that got put into the first book, and it's just been so like, yes, there's always a run to the finish in every one of these books. There is a twist in the book that's coming out in July, because he has a broken leg. So it gets a little bit complicated for him. So I'll just say that it's, I tried to make it even more comical because the setup to the book is that he's injured. He gets injured in a hockey game. He's a hockey player, and he breaks his leg. And so, so this is a grand gesture that it is quite.
I love it.
I had
We're
fun writing
all the ways
fun
this
writing
could
it.
happen. So if you had
Yeah.
to pick a grand gesture from a movie that's a favorite, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, it seems cliched at this point, but yeah, When Harry Met Sally, I think probably influenced me more than any other grand gesture in a movie. Because it's got everything. It's the racing to find that person. It's, you've got the ticking clock of New Year's Eve. You've got like the angry declaration of love, I hate you, Harry. I hate, and so for me, it's just like, I think that probably influenced me more than any other rom-com grand gesture. Yeah.
I mean, that speech stays with you. It certainly does.
Oh,
and
yeah.
if you can make Billy feel like a romantic character, like that's right. That's really good writing right there.
Yeah.
Like, sorry. So Alexis, how about you? Do you have a favorite grand gesture from a movie?
So I'm about to get myself kicked out of this pool, but I have never seen When Harry Met Sally because I do not buy him as a romantic hero.
Well, that's what I'm telling
you.
That's what I'm telling you.
I'm not like a huge fan of either of them.
Like, I feel like that's an important thing for you to understand. Like, Sally doesn't either in the beginning. So
But I'm also not
right.
like I haven't watched.
No
a ton
one
of Meg
does.
Ryan
Everyone
movies
sort of
before.
hates him. Like everyone.
Okay, let's back off of Alexis. It's fine.
No,
We're gonna judge her silently, but it's okay. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I was like, should I like mention this? And I was like, oh my god.
I think it's great because I think it's that's the thing. Like nobody would believe this guy as a romantic lead or romantic hero, and the writing is just so there. So
maybe someday. But what I thought of for this is it's a movie I've seen probably 100 times, and I watched again recently because it was just added to Netflix. I prefer the grand gestures that are like more quiet and personal, and specific to the characters, because I think I would be like hugely embarrassed if somebody like drove up on like a fire truck or something shouting my name. I would like run and hide somewhere.
No Pretty Woman climbing the fire escape.
No, God, no. I would lock my window. So, but I recently rewatched Legally Blonde.
Okay.
And I think the grand gesture in that one is just that he believes her and he supports her when she takes over the case. And like she has those moments of doubt and she looks back to Emmett and he's just like, go on, you got this. Like, and for me, that is like really powerful because it's her arc, and he's just like supporting and uplifting her. And I have this moment with the grand gesture of You Had Me at All Out, without giving like too much away, where there is a rush in a car to get to the venue, and Ashton's son says, are you going to stand on a stage and tell everyone how you feel? He's like 8. And he goes, no, mijo, I don't think so. I only need to tell her. But it's still a grand gesture because it involves both of their entire families. And like in Latino families, that's like a really big deal once you start like mixing all of that. So she gets it for the gesture that it is.
Yeah. And it actually means more because he's not making a big show, because
right.
They're both actors. The fact that he is taking this to this very intimate level.
Yeah. And on the show that they're in, the characters that they played, there was like a big like on stage moment. And he's like, that's not me. And I don't need to do that here. That's not what it is. And then in a lot like Adios, which I'm not going to say exactly what happens because it comes out in September, there is a rush to the airport, but then it's also still a very personal grand gesture. And his family is very skeptical about whether it will work. They do not understand what he's doing at all. So hopefully that will be very funny.
It is fun, and they do bring in, because you do end up having both families all there, and that's a great element too of getting all the families on the page and in the scene. So we're just talking about books and movies. I do want to ask, and for some of us, people who we might have seen pictures of a screenplay recently, for some of us this is actually happening. But if you had to pick one of your books to be made into a movie, which one would be the one that you're like, yes, this one? And I'll start with Lissa, since she's recently posted about it. This is amazing to see the screenplay coming up for, it's the first book, right? The Bromance Book Club.
Yeah. So it's the first book in the series. It's being developed by Netflix, and I was on vacation last week. And not just on vacation, like off the grid vacation. I was in Yellowstone National Park, and we go almost every year, not last year, obviously. And we stay near the northwest entrance of the park. And if you know anything about Yellowstone, it's the least used entrance, most remote, and there's no cell service, there's no internet service. And for some reason, the Wi-Fi in the house that we rented kicked on Friday afternoon, and my phone just starts blowing up. And I'm like, well, what the heck? I've had all of my notifications on. Everyone who matters knows I'm on vacation. And so I pick my phone up, and it's my agent, and it's like 50 text messages being like, check your phone, check your email. We've got a script. Like, she's just like dying that she can't get in touch with me. So I've read the script. I love it. They did such an amazing job of staying true to the story, yet adapting it for the screen. You have to make changes. Not everything adapts well,
This is going to be for
What's
Netflix.
that?
This is going to be for Netflix, correct? Okay.
Netflix, yeah. So so it's moving right along. We think they're going out for casting this summer. And I can't say who, but I do know who their top 3 choices are for the main lead. And it blows my mind who they're going after.
Amazing.
So it's been a lot of fun. But I have to, like, my poor agent, I think she had like a mini stroke or something, because she was like, I can't believe you're on vacation right now with no cell service.
So this is like, that's in the world of books and movies, and this is wild that it happened so fast, because books get optioned all the time, and any of us could have things we just can't talk about in the moment because of things like that. So the fact that it's happening so quickly from the time that this book came out, that's just super cool. And I wish that for everyone in this pool.
I do too. I think the more romance we can get on the screen, the better.
But if I know some of you may have similar situations that you can't talk about yet, and I'm not expecting you to, but I would like to ask, if you had to pick one of your books to be turned into a movie, which would it be? Rosie?
Publicly announced, so I can say it. The Roommate was optioned for film. Yeah, it's exciting. And so we're a little bit behind Lissa, but we have a screenwriter, Meredith Dawson, who I'm like obsessed with. She came up writing for the Mindy Project, and she's working on some rom-coms for Paul Feig right now, and she's like whatever. So she's adapting, and it's been awesome. I wasn't sure like if it would be a very collaborative process. I kind of assumed like they'd be like, bye, like we'll let you know if anything happens, like it's ours now. But Meredith has been just like really open to, like, she follows my Instagram stories, like when I have like fan cast, she's like, these are really helpful. And we've like shared some articles around just basically like how rom-coms and like kind of TV and movies in general have become kind of sexless, like even like things with romance arcs like don't sort of really go there, even in the way that these and stuff. And that I kind of thought like, oh, The Roommate will never get optioned because, you know, the sex is really essential to the story. But like both Meredith and my entire production team and my film agent like are so passionate about like the sex education focus and like how this is something that needs to be talked about in intimate relationships. So yeah, I've had some really great conversations about that and excited to hopefully see
exciting.
this.
Yeah, exciting to see a rom-com that does not fade to black.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Denise, how about you?
Yeah, I have no secrets to share or not share.
That's okay. It's it's still going to happen.
I think any of them would be cool. If Netflix is watching, I'd be fine with any of them being made into films. I think the one I actually just finished, which is my third book, which nobody knows anything about because I just finished drafting it, is for me more kind of traditional rom-com and would be a lot of fun and very steamy on the screen. So, but yeah, I'm comfortable with any of them.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of neat to have like the one that you think this is the one that would really work in that kind of format. And so make sure you watch for book 3, which comes out next spring.
Next fall. Well, I guess it'll be book 6, but it'll be novel 3.
Oh, right,
yeah,
you have those really cool novellas that you just announced, which is so much fun.
Yeah, those can be adapted for film too. I don't know what they're fully about yet, but I'll figure that out in the next few weeks. And then, yeah, those would be great.
They take place in the airport, right?
Yeah, they're all connected in the airport and have kind of different tropes. And the first one, which was announced, is an airport dog groomer meets her Diet Coke break frequent flyer. And so their whole relationship takes place during layovers and in the airport.
Love it. All right, Carrie, how about you?
Well, I think the one that would be best as a movie is probably Waiting for Tom Hanks, just because it is the most cinematic, but also because I have like this fantasy that Tom Hanks would play a cameo in it. Like he would be on the movie set and give the lead character love advice. That's my dream.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. It'd be so much fun. I'm already like picturing it. I could see it, you know? Okay, and Alexis?
Sorry, I had to like shut my camera off for a second because a mosquito flew over and I had to get it. And I didn't want to be like flailing around on camera.
Sure. I was like, she could be.
But I did get it. I would love to see You Had Me at Hola on screen because I think I love to see the behind the scenes stuff. And I think there's like something super meta about like filming a movie of them filming a TV show.
Right. I would love to see those on-screen scenes on screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really fun. And especially since now the conversation around intimacy coordinators has broadened and expanded and like people know what they are thanks to Bridgerton. I was like, where were all these articles when I was doing my research a year ago?
I know.
I think those scenes would be like super fun. I've always thought those scenes are like really sexy, even though the characters are like kind of being managed by somebody else. They're really intimate. So I think that would be fun. But then I also was just thinking of my Audible novella that comes out next week, What the Hex. I pitched it as Addams Family meets the Kardashians. And I feel like it's like, I did so many like mood boards and like character sheets and everything for it. I think it would just be very like visually, like a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's set on an island and there's a wedding and there's all of these characters that are very colorful. It would definitely be, I'd watch it. So yeah, What the Hex comes out on Audible and I'm like, I cannot wait for this. It's so much fun. So, we're going to get a little shallow here, kind of splash around in the shallow end of the pool. And we were talking about, sexy stuff and whether or not Billy Crystal is or is not a romantic lead. And I want to know, who is your favorite, the piece of rom-com eye candy that is your favorite. So Alexis, I'll start with you.
So this brought up the question, like, because I have my answer, but I was like, this also brings up the question of like, what exactly is a rom-com and how it's kind of like a loose term because it's more of like an action rom-com, which is definitely like a side area of the rom-com movie sphere. So I would go with Angelina Jolie in Mr. and Mrs. Smith because I love that movie. It's so much fun. I watch it anytime it's on TV and she just looks fantastic in it. But at the same time, I also wish that a lot of these guys who are currently playing superheroes would also just like do some rom-coms. Like I know we got Chris Evans in some, like What's Your Number with Anna Faris. And Michael B. Jordan did that one with Zac Efron. That was not a good movie. And I wished it had been better because that was a good cast. So I would like for them to do some more. But yeah, I would have to go with Angelina Jolie.
I like it. I like it. All right. Carrie, how about you? I mean, besides Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Tom Hanks would be my easy answer, but I feel like my favorite rom-com leads are never like the super hunky muscular guys. Like I always go for the kind of nerdy guys who are really good at expressing their feelings. So to name like an underrated rom-com, there's a movie called The Incredible Jessica James that I love, and Chris O'Dowd is the romantic lead. And I think he's so cute in that movie. Like he's great in Bridesmaids too, even though that's more of a straight comedy with like a little bit of a romantic comedy. But I always love when there's a romantic lead who's just kind of sweet and nice.
Yeah, so the beta, we like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and that's interesting too, because like the question when I was like, it could be the actor themselves that you're like, or sometimes it's not the actor, it's the character. So you're saying, yes, him, but also specifically this character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Denise? Turn on your mic. It's got to happen at least once in every.
I know. I have a shirt that says "Unmuted Woman." I think he's been into rom-coms, so I'm going to count him. But Kumail Nanjiani,
yes,
and Lovebirds was really more of like a action movie, but I loved the love story in that with him and Issa Rae, and like just the way they interacted and the way you saw their relationship kind of coming together and falling apart and coming together. I thought was so perfect, and I got a good ab workout from laughing at that movie.
Well,
so
he's got like this awkward humor that really kind of, I mean, there's an element to him. Yeah, like I wouldn't say he's
so awkward, and just together, it's in my whole heart, like Senator Burrows, my whole heart. If you don't know that reference, go watch the movie.
It was a lot more violent than I was expecting.
It is very violent. But yeah, so I'd go with him.
Okay. Rosie, how about you?
I'm going to go with Heath Ledger in 10 Things I Hate About You. It's just like has everything. Like he's got the bad boy thing, but then there's like such sweetness and vulnerability and the way he gets to know her. Like that performance is like sort of untouchable in my mind.
I'm here with you. It is everything. It really is. I love it so much. I can't.
Him singing on the bleachers, like
it is hard. It is hard to top that. There's a lot of things about it that it's hard to top, but yes, definitely. And Alyssa, how about you?
Remember to unmute. Okay. I'm gonna go with Sandra Bullock in While You Were Sleeping. Again, like I feel like one of those movies just influenced me so much. I feel like she brings like the perfect blend of humor but vulnerability. Like there's like the scene where she's confessing to him in a coma, that this whole thing is a scam, and she's like really sorry that she's roped him into this, and like I actually feel like that's an incredibly sad scene. Like you just get this image, like it's really funny because she's funny in it, but at the same time, it just adds so much depth to that character. So I gotta go with Sandra Bullock in While You Were Sleeping. I just love her in that role.
Yeah, and that's because Sandra Bullock often plays like she'll always in so many of these rom-coms she plays like the woman who's like she doesn't care about her hair or her makeup, and she's kind of goofy, and she does all these like traditionally anti-feminine things, and but in that one she's just she's just kind of her, she's kind of this this down to earth, but yet with this fantasy, and gets herself into this situation, and very vulnerable. I think she plays a very vulnerable character in that, so that's great. All right, so I was going to ask you a question that might be difficult, and we're gonna pretty much wrap it up tonight with this question. So I'll do both. So we have like the bad and the good. So if there's a rom-com that is just absolutely terrible, it's awful, like, but you cannot help yourself from watching it. You just can't help it. You still love it. What would that be? Do you have an idea for that, Alexis?
Okay, so this one, I love this one. And I watch it anytime I cross it on TV. This is also Sandra Bullock because she is a rom-com queen. But I watched it fairly recently, and like the hero is kind of awful, and that is Miss Congeniality. I truly love that movie. I get so much enjoyment out of watching it. But like the most recent time that I watched it, I was like, God, Benjamin Brett is like a total misogynist. He's like so mean to her. And that like, so that is what put it into like the terrible category for me here, even though I still really enjoy the movie and her.
Yeah, totally. So I'm gonna ask at the same time. So there's that one, but do you have a favorite rom-com? Beyond that, like what is your favorite?
Clueless.
Clueless. Got a little bit of Emma read.
I've never seen Emma. I've never read it. Clueless, though, hit at the right point for me. I think I was in like 6th grade, and my dad took me to see it in the movie theater, and I did not understand any of the sex or drug references. I kind of knew that like what they were talking about. I was like, I don't get what that means, and it was fine. But it's something I could just always watch. And that moment where she realizes, like, I love Josh is just like imprinted upon me.
Yes, and that is like that. I almost put that in my trifecta. Instead of the grand gesture, I was going to put that light bulb moment where they're like, "Oh my God, I love that moment." You know,
the realization of love. Yeah, it's just it's so perfect with like the flashbacks and her walking because she can't drive her car, and the music and like the fountain behind her. It's just perfection.
Okay, Carrie, a rom-com that you know it's bad, but you just love it anyway.
Okay, this one was really hard for me because honestly, there aren't that many rom-coms that I think are bad. So I went for one that I feel like is kind of a problematic trope, and that's anything to do with a makeover or like appearances. I love them, but like I Feel Pretty with Amy Schumer. It's like she gets hit on the head and wakes up thinking she's hot. But then you're like, well, did she look that bad before? It's so hard when you get into anything based on appearance. Kind of not to be
a lot of
honest,
baggage there.
Not offensive. Yeah, it's really hard. And I thought it was a fun movie, but if I thought too hard about what it was saying, I was like, I don't know if I like this.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's the thing. Like you're enjoying the ride, but then when you start to break it down, you're like, ugh. But it's fun. But ugh.
Yeah.
And then how about your favorite? When you got to pick a favorite rom-com of all, what would it be?
Okay, well, I'll go for one of my favorite underrated rom-coms, which is Just Right, starring Queen Latifah and Common. Because
I just watched that recently. I love it. And my daughter wants to be a physical therapist. So I'm like, you have to watch this movie.
It's so good because Queen Latifah is like the most charismatic actress in the world. And whenever she's on screen, I'm so happy. Like seeing her fall in love with Common, and there's basketball. I don't even like sports, but in that movie, I'm like, I love basketball. It's great.
I had the like the throw something across the room moment because of her cousin or whoever that is, because you knew it was coming and you still hoped it wouldn't, and you're like, ah.
Yes, exactly. I've watched it like a million times. Every time I get so mad.
Okay, Denise, a rom-com that you're like, it's that whole like, but I love it.
You know, I know we're short on time, so I can actually list the same movie for both questions, which is You've Got Mail, which is my favorite. It also hit at that right time, like in that sweet spot of AOL. And I was very popular on AOL in a way that was not true of reality. And so I've always loved everything about that movie, but also and on rewatch, it is super problematic in a lot of ways. And I was on Allie Parker's podcast, and the whole podcast is her ripping up the movie and me be going like, yeah, but they fall in love. And so that it's the same one for me. I love it. I'm trash for the epistolary piece and the meeting in the internet and finding love in that way. But also, yeah, like they're also committing a kind of adultery and cheating on people and like corporate culture. Like there's so much to despise about the characters, and yet so much to kind of love about the love story. So it's double-edged for me.
And then the favorite was this Just Right. Is that what you?
No, my favorite and my least favorite are the same. That you got.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. I see what you meant by they're the same. I thought you meant for a minute there. I thought you meant the same as Carrie. Okay, no, that makes sense. All right, Rosie.
My one that I think is kind of terrible, but I still love it is The Family Stone. which is a holiday rom-com, so it's like kind of a subgenre. The reason I think it's kind of terrible is like there's a lot of like siblings swapping love interests in a very short period of time, and like going after like your siblings' love interests in a way that like, is it weird? Kind of. But at the same time, I'm still like very charmed by that movie, and I think it gets like a lot of things right about the holiday season and how they're like the loneliness of it in some ways, and like the family moments, and there's like some really lovely bittersweet elements. So like you will hear me talk about the Family Stone, but there's some issues. And then the one I really like is The Princess Bride. Like I think it goes back to like what's a rom-com, what's not a rom-com. But for me, that's sort of like the OG rom-com imprint, and it's just like pretty perfect. So
You're not the only person to say this. A lot of people say The Princess Bride is their favorite rom-com. Have you heard of the book As You Wish?
I've read the book and I don't recommend it. No offense to William Golding or whatever, but basically like the main difference is that in the book, like Buttercup has like no agency, and like
okay. I was talking about, no, there's a new book called As You Wish that Carrie Elwes wrote.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you meant the book that it was based on.
No. Yeah, it's based on his experience on set, and everyone.
Oh, I'm sure that's lovely.
No,
don't
I get what
read the other guy's book. It's bad.
No, I was saying that if you enjoyed The Princess Bride, you would definitely enjoy this As You Wish is what it's called. And it's the audiobook actually has like multiple actors coming in and reading and talking about their experiences. So yeah, I would check it out if you like The Princess Bride. But not the other thing.
Yes, just don't read the source material. It'll
Which
upset
is always wild, to see something like what the origin story is and what it becomes.
I agree with Rosie. The book that the movie is based on
is going to be great. Okay, so Lissa, how about you? A rom-com that cringy is the term that my children use, but you still like it.
I would have to say Sabrina. Did anyone see it's the remake?
Oh,
the remake.
Yeah,
I mean,
classic, and then remade with Harrison Ford. Yes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do love that movie, but like when you go back and watch it now, like, or when I go back and watch now, I'm like, this is kind of, there's some problematic things in this movie. I mean, they do some creepy stuff to her, and it's just rude, and the class, that they never deal with the issue of the class differences and the wealth differences, and anyway, so but I still love to watch it. I still watch it. And the one that my favorite that I just, While You Were Sleeping, it's like the gold standard for me. Yeah.
It's a good one. And the thing is like that movie, it's not just the couple, it's that entire cast that really
right.
makes
Yeah. And just the vulnerability of the characters, and I think it's it's actually a really good example of what we were talking about earlier of rom-coms don't have to be slapstick like every second, that like you can have lonely characters, you can have sad characters, and it can still be a great rom-com.
There's definitely some moments of like the guy that lives in her apartment building.
Joe Jr.
Oh my goodness. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up here. So everyone, we're gonna grab our towels and get ready to dry off. But I've had so much fun having everyone here. I'm checking to see if there were any questions from the chat, but I'm not seeing any. So I'm just gonna assume everyone was just having a great time and hanging out and enjoying the pool party and talking about rom-coms and making lists of rom-coms you are now going to go watch, as well as rom-coms you are going to buy. So you can buy any of the rom-com books that we've talked about this evening, from Rosie to Alexis to Denise, Carrie, Lissa, myself, from Love Sweet Arrow. You can check them out and get them. And many of us have provided signed book plates and other swag that you can get with the book if you order it through Love Sweet Arrow. And you'll keep yourself entertained all summer long. Poolside reading, beachside reading, all of it. So thank you so much for joining me tonight, everyone. It's been great talking to you about one of my favorite topics, and I look forward to reading all of your books. So thanks. This has been Love Sweet Arrow and the Rom Com Pool Party. Good night.
Bye.